This is our Go-Ed Game Jam 14 game dev vlog video submission. Usually on our channel we do a mini game in a day once a month, but we will be substituting this since we made a video game in 10 days with the Game Jam.
This was a blast. We usually do a 2-week game jam. We've done 2 Pirate Software ones in the past. This one was a 10-day one. It was a little shorter time frame and also during a busier time of year.
The game that we submitted for this game jam is CaddiShack. It was based on the theme of everything is a resource. CaddiShack comes from the caddisfly. And you can see on your opening screen it says, caddisfly larvae make protective casings from resources in their environment. If you have a caddisfly larva, it'll pick up sticks and rocks, put it on itself to make a little case that it can metamorphosize and then turn into the caddisfly. Humans have harnessed this power of the caddis larva. If you put the caddisfly larva in like a terrarium and give it things like amethyst or jade, it will make casings out of those, and then humans will turn those into jewelry, which you can buy in real life, which I think is super cool. And that is what this game is modeled after.
We're going to jump into a quick demonstration of the game, and then we'll talk about the pieces of the game and how we made things. So when you click play here, you get thrown immediately into the bracelet building station. Here we have our bead pile, our hand, our selection, as well as a discard pile. And then what you're trying to do is build a bracelet of the highest value. Bracelets values are calculated with points and molt. Each bead has a specific point value, so I'll go ahead and play these and then continue playing beads until we have a bracelet of 10 beads, and then it'll calculate it. It goes that quick for the bracelet building station. You come in here and buy your materials to make new bracelets. We want to make just a couple beads right now. Cost me 170 for these materials, and we have our current money up here, so it's going to take that 170 away from it when we check out. And then we start as the Go-Ed larva. It basically sniffs out where any materials or sands are, so you can make whatever type of beads that you want to out of that. And then you're right back in the bracelet station. So it's this nice loop where you make bracelets that turn into money, you use the money to buy materials, use the materials to make beads, and use the beads to make bracelets that get money, and then the cycle just repeats over and over and over again 4 times for this game. The goal basically for this game jam version is to have the most money by the end.
So what we're supposed to include in our devlog is your process. How did you make the game? Challenges. What difficulties did you face and how did you overcome them? Key mechanics. Explain your game's most important features and how you implemented them. And lessons learned. Share any milestones or insights you think others can learn from. How did we make our game? I am primarily the art person. I make my art in GIMP, and so we do 2D pixel-ish art in GIMP. That's what I've practiced with, and I just love GIMP. The world tells me I should use Sprite, but I don't know. Every time I use GIMP, I just like it more. So that's where I'm at.
I did most of the game code. I was working in Godot with GitHub as a tool for helping track what we want to do. And we usually do our own recorded audio. And that was actually a challenge. We ran out of time. But we have a friend who makes music, and he graciously made some music for us to use in this project. And so we really want to shout out Jordan Krebs for that really awesome soundtrack in it, something that we would never be able to do. And then I also really need to shout out my brother, who has done a game jam with us previously and made games with us before. We have a Discord, and I was really struggling to figure out a bug, basically set it aside, and he jumped in and fixed the one line of code that solved the issue. So sometimes you just need another perspective.
So this is our game design document. For the past 4 months, we have been honing in our abilities to improve our game design document, which you can see in the timeline here. This is based on making a video game in about 8 hours, but clearly this game jam was 10 days, so more. And that gave us a great jumping off place. Potential lesson learned is I think our scope expanded and we went out of our game design document, went past it, went different ways, but it was really helpful for us to at least start it. So first you can see our many brainstorm ideas, and we ended up going with the caddisfly bead. Make beads to sell at a different substrate. Goal, sell bead jewelry, make money. Just very raw idea. That's where it started.
This is where we talk about the general theme as well as the player experience for our games. So basically, what is the game at the end of the day going to evoke from the player? What are the feelings that are going to be there? We have our theme here of everything as a resource combined with the caddisfly bead making. We combine that all into a cozy bug bead-based bracelet builder. That is the synopsis of the game. We think about, okay, well, what are the phases we want in the game?
We have these little doodles here. One is the shop idea. So we knew that we'd have the shop, making the beads, and then making the bracelet. Making the bracelet, we had a couple different ideas. We were potentially making the beads via Tetris style. We decided that was too hard and then outside of what we could accomplish in the time frame. And the other idea that we had was doing a snake type game, which you go around the terrarium area, collect your things, and you make your beads. And then lastly, the bead making station. It's essentially a card game where the color of your bead is like maybe your suit and your decoration is maybe a value, and then you put them together to make a hand, a run, and that is the points of your hand, or that is the cost of your jewelry.
This is where we really get into like what are the core mechanics and notes on each station. What's neat is since we have each of these 3 stations, they end up working really well in our GitHub workflow. So if I go into our project here and we go to our milestones and you see functional shop station, functional terrarium station, and functional bracelet station, and each of these I copied the game design notes into so that we have something to go off of, and then each one had its own tickets that were defined for the different components that went into each of those stations. Here we have the terrarium station. We have the note of the core mechanic. It should be pretty straightforward when you develop a core mechanic so that you're not going too far out of bounds or making it too big of scope. It should really be the distilled, like step-by-step actions that a player takes as a core mechanic, ideally like every few seconds. For the terrarium, it's move to material, collect material, repeat until you have a color and a special, or until the lifespan of the larva runs out. Then that creates a bead, and you repeat that for however many larvae you have. That core mechanic is something that the player can do over and over and over again. For us, the larva's lifespan is 10 seconds, and so that's how long the player, like the maximum amount of time that the player has. But it usually goes a lot faster. Going to the bracelet building station, this one's core mechanic is draw a hand, play your trash beads from that hand, repeat until you have 10 beads on your bracelet, tally those points from the bracelet, and then gain money equal to those points from the bracelet. So that's a pretty straightforward approach to what the core mechanic actually does there, and you can do that without needing to have like balance or a ton of animations. At first, it started out as things just teleporting around. The shop's core mechanic is pretty straightforward. It's just like going to an online shopping thing where you add an item to your cart, you can remove them too, see your total cost, you keep adding stuff until you click checkout, and then that spends your money. The interesting thing about this game is also along the lines of the theme of the game. In Godot, I made everything, almost everything, a resource, a custom resource in Godot. So you see all these resources here of these info scripts, and these are things like, let's go to like sand material info. This is the information, the data that's stored and used to populate the various things in the game. So this is like the sand material, or if I go to like bead info, it tracks the sand and the special material on a bead. So this information can be passed from station to station without having to track the actual scenes in Godot. So what that means is each of these beads that I'm clicking is a scene, but it has data behind it that determines what it actually has as its characteristics. In a way, every single piece that you interact with that is a resource from like a gameplay perspective, from a game design and game engine perspective, is also a resource. It's based in a resource. So just kind of like a little cheeky play on that theme there. I had the most fun making this station because all of these little animations of things flying around and slapping all the beads up and then having all the things like toss off to the side and scatter. If you like click on run info, the bead pile like spreads out and it does a different spread every time. These animations were really fun to do that tell you what the points and molt are that you got.
In the shop, we here have an example of our Easter egg. So that was actually really hard to do. I spent hours making that egg and just like also just making it look good. I am so proud of this. Like, I spent so much time. It was just so hard. Adding an Easter egg into our game, something clever or funny. Obviously, the Easter egg, we made it an egg. The purple egg can sniff out the sand objects, but the Go Ahead egg can sniff out sand and special items. So it's, just fun and cheeky.
I had a heck of a time figuring out how to do things like the hover text and all of that, but they're super worth it, and they're actually things that I'm going to carry over into other games.
That's gonna wrap up our Go Ahead Game Jam 14 game devlog submission here, and it was a whole lot of fun, and we'll see you next month with our next mini game in a day.
All right, cool.